Going to be doing a couple of things today. First, we're going to start with some updates on the Diddy trial. I'm going to run through the Diddy trial, explain just so anyone who doesn't already know what's going on with the Diddy scenario can understand it. And then we're going to catch up a little bit on some other stuff. So let's start with this. I'm going to go ahead and hit play.
A few weeks ago, P. Diddy's trial began, and there has been a lot that has happened since it started. From Kid Cudi claiming that Diddy was standing like a supervillain after blowing up his car, to many others testifying against him. But there has also been a lot of misinformation floating around surrounding the trial and everything that's going on. So I thought it would be best to explain everything that's happening. However, to understand that, we first have to understand how Diddy got in the situation that he's in. I'll keep this brief since I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with the background, but it's also important to understand where he's at legally to get what's going on. Diddy, aka Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or Sean Combs, if you don't know, is a rapper, producer, and music industry executive. He started the record label Bad Boy Records and signed artists like the notorious B.I.G. He was extremely successful in the 90s and early 2000s and eventually became one of the richest artists to come from hip-hop. His net worth has even been estimated to be $1 billion. I say this to say he has had a lot of wealth and power in both the music and entertainment industries for quite a long time. For years, there have been multiple rumors of Diddy being a bad guy, whether it be theories of him blowing up Kid Cudi's car to him putting out a hit on Tupac, but there was never anything that took him down, until his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura sued him in 2023. She said, "After years in silence and darkness, I am finally ready to tell my story and to speak up on behalf of myself and for the benefit of other women who face violence and abuse in their relationships." In the lawsuit, Cassie claimed that not too long after she met Diddy, he would give her drugs to make her compliant, he would beat her multiple times a year, and he forced her to have sex with male prostitutes while he filmed. He very quickly became controlling of her as he was in control of her career, and he also would pay for her car, apartment, clothes, and also had access to her medical records. To keep her under his control, Diddy would also threaten her music career if she didn't conceal his actions or obey him. Apparently, a few years into their relationship, he would coerce her into having sex with male prostitutes while he watched, filmed, and pleasured himself. Basically, Diddy was also a cuck. This lawsuit was a huge deal, but eventually it was settled outside of court, which basically reads to me as, hey, I don't want all this stuff coming up about me in a public court setting, so I'm just going to pay you some hush money. Regardless, though, this set off a chain reaction of lawsuits targeted at Diddy, alleging a huge variety of things like abuse, SA, and much more. He was literally named in hundreds of lawsuits. However, while this was destroying his public image, he was still doing alright legally. That was until his house got raided by the feds. The feds said, "Earlier today, Homeland Security Investigations New York executed law enforcement actions as part of an ongoing investigation with assistance from HSI Los Angeles, HSI Miami, and our local law enforcement partners. We will provide further information as it becomes available." Both of his sons, Justin and Christian, were also handcuffed during the raid. So clearly, either because of the lawsuits or before them, Diddy was under investigation by the feds. After the raid, CNN got footage of Diddy physically assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway. This was the only actual evidence that the public had seen, and it looked pretty bad. So Diddy put out an apology.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you gotta do that. I was fucked up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
But then in September of 2024, everything came crumbling down for Diddy when he was arrested and indicted by the feds.
Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
In the indictment, they say that Diddy abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To accomplish this, they claim that he used his employees and his businesses to create a criminal empire that indulged in the things that the U.S. attorney mentioned earlier. They said from 2009 and continuing for years,
I have a disgusted look on my face the whole stream.
Among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. The attorney referred to Diddy's business, Combs Enterprise, as a criminal organization because Diddy had many of his employees working to cover up everything he was doing. They said that employees engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other things, trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Probably the biggest thing to come from this case and the largest point of contention is the so-called freak off. Basically, the idea is that Diddy would have these giant parties that would last for days, fueled by drugs, and he'd also allegedly use the drugs and other weapons to coerce men and women alike to participate in these sexual activities. So, like implied by this statement from the U.S. attorney, there are three main charges against Diddy: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. There was a lot more details in the indictment that I went over in my previous video breaking all of this down, but this is the gist of the background information. All of this brings us to the trial, where Diddy has been getting slammed by a huge list of credible witnesses that make it look like this case is not going to end well for him. When you're indicted by the feds, usually that means you're cooked, because they have found enough evidence to believe that you are guilty of what they are claiming. So this trial already wasn't looking good. But now witnesses are revealing a ton of new information that will seemingly put him away for a long time. First of all, you might be wondering why this trial isn't streamed like many others are, and that's because electronic media coverage is banned in federal criminal proceedings. So because of that, we only have drawings of the court proceeding. They also tried to get a mistrial at one point, but that didn't go anywhere either. Anyways, right now Diddy is facing 5 criminal counts. 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison and a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. And he's also facing 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Diddy's defense team, who now has the viral lawyer from Young Thug's trial, Brian Steele, argued that he did nothing that he is accused of. They denied a plea deal and have made a few arguments against the prosecution. One of their main arguments is that there was a mutual violence between Cassie and Diddy, since Cassie is one of the main victims in the indictment. They described Cassie as strong with a nature of violence and capable of starting physical confrontation. Also in the trial, they went over in more detail and provided pictures of what they found when they raided
but we already know that doesn't
They said
work.
that they found 2 AR-15 type guns with the serial numbers scraped off, sex toys, and in total, they said that they found more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil or lubricant across both homes. They also found a ton of drugs. In response, Diddy's team said things like, "Baby oil isn't illegal, everything was consensual." They also said, though, that the guns were found disassembled and therefore were inoperable, which I think is a pretty silly argument. Prosecutors argued that the close proximity of these items shows that the threat of violence was used to coerce victims to get in on the freak-off. While displaying the firearms, they also presented a fully loaded handgun, which was found in a piece of luggage. And like I said, they mentioned they found a variety of pills, marijuana, powders, and other drugs that prosecutors have alleged were used to make women compliant during freak-offs and would allow them to perform long past the point of exhaustion. Anyways, this case revolves mainly around 4 victims. The main one is Cassie. She is basically the star witness in this case, as she saw everything after dating Diddy for so long, and she also suffered a lot at his hands. Many of the statements in the trial are all revolving around Diddy's abuse of Cassie, among other things. The trial kicked off with Cassie testifying against Diddy. She said that after signing to his record label, they began dating on and off for over a decade. She said that the relationship started off pretty normal, but over time he started to get violent. He would threaten her if she disobeyed him, and he made her participate in the freak-off. Cassie also talked about multiple instances where Diddy physically abused her, like the incident that was caught on camera in the hotel where Diddy hit her. She said, "When I chose to leave, I grabbed what I could and I got out. And Sean followed me into the hallway before the elevators and grabbed me up, threw me on the ground, kicked me, tried to drag me back into my room." The defense's main argument against everything that Cassie was saying that based on text messages, Cassie was down to be involved with whatever was going on at the time.
Today is Ventura's first day of cross-examination. The defense has thousands of messages the couple sent to each other. Many Ventura read out loud. Early on in their relationship, Ventura told Combs, quote, "I love you so much, it consumes my life. But defense attorney Ana Estevo introduced this exchange. Ventura, quote, "I'm always ready to freak off. Combs, I can't wait to watch you. I want you to get real hot." She replies, quote, "Me too. I just want to be uncontrollable." But when the defense tried to frame things a certain way, Ventura wasn't having it. She sent this message to Combs, quote, "I miss you. I miss our love-making sessions in the afternoons." When asked if that meant freak-offs, Ventura said not necessarily. Ventura testified even after this exchange in 2016. During what she says Combs hit her in the face, she tried to rekindle their romance.
However, I don't think that means she was signing up to be physically assaulted. A hotel security guard named Israel Flores also testified in Cassie's defense. Apparently, there were multiple videos that he showed of Diddy assaulting Cassie from 2016. He said that after receiving a report about a woman in distress, he found Diddy and Cassie in an elevator and said, "The best way I can describe it is like a devilish stare. He was just looking at me." Israel said that Diddy offered him a large bribe to not tell anyone about it, but he declined. The prosecution also called Daniel Phillip to the stand, who was a male escort. He said that Diddy would often pay him to sleep with Cassie while Diddy watched and pleasured himself. But he also said that he witnessed Diddy being violent toward her. He said, "Mr. Combs came out of the room and I just saw a bottle fly past her and hit the wall. He grabbed her by her hair and started dragging her by her hair into the bedroom. I could hear Cassie yelling, 'I'm sorry, I'm sorry.' And then I could hear again what sounded like she was being slapped or someone was being slapped around and slammed around the room." Daniel said he was scared to try to speak up because of Diddy's power. Another person who testified on Cassie's behalf was Dawn Richard, a lady who was once in Diddy's pop group Danity Kane. She said that she also saw multiple incidents where Diddy was abusing her, like one time when she was cooking breakfast. Dawn said he came downstairs angry and was like, "Where the f was his egg?" And he was telling Cassie that she never gets anything right. Where the f is his food? And he proceeded to come over to her and took the skillet with the eggs in it and tried to hit her over the head with it, and she fell to the ground. She also said there were multiple instances where she saw Diddy hit Cassie in public. One time when they were at a dinner with Usher, Neo, and Interscope Records co-founder Jimmy Iovine. Keep in mind though that all of this stuff is alleged. You know, it's not all fully confirmed, at least not all of it. But when so many people are corroborating the same stories with the same themes, it's hard to believe that these aren't true. A close friend of Cassie's, Carrie Morgan, testified saying that there were 2 times she saw Diddy assault Cassie. Once was in the hills and the other on a trip in Jamaica. She said, "I heard her screaming and I went to the hallway. The hallway was extremely long, and they were coming out of the master bedroom and he was dragging her by her hair on the floor." Carrie also said that she stopped talking to Cassie after Diddy tried to choke her and hit her, and that she also accepted $30,000 in hush money from Diddy after she threatened to sue. Even Cassie's mom testified saying that Diddy was threatening to release sex tapes of Cassie, and she showed pictures she took of Cassie being physically injured at his hands. Another male escort testified and said that he worked with them multiple times. By the way, this guy goes by the Punisher, and I just thought that was funny and I should tell you guys. He described a similar scene to the other male escort, and when asked if Cassie seemed comfortable, he said apart from some flinching, she seemed fine, which is important to note because the main point of contention from the defense is that, oh, Cassie was totally down to be involved in all of these freak things that they were doing. There were multiple other people like a makeup artist, a stylist, one of Diddy's ex-personal assistants, and many more who all testified saying they saw Diddy assault Cassie, that they saw bruises or gashes, and that they heard him being very aggressive toward her. All of these stories seem to line up and corroborate this idea of Diddy abusing her. They even called in a psychologist to explain why Cassie may have stayed in this abusive relationship. But Diddy's abuse of Cassie extended to others as well, including Kid Cudi. One of the most viral allegations against Diddy is that he blew up Kid Cudi's car. It's been a rumor on the internet for a while, but it's finally been explained in this trial. It all started because during Diddy and Cassie's on and off relationship, there was a period of time in the early 2010s when she started dating Kid Cudi. And when Diddy found out, he was not happy. So because of this, Cudi was called to testify.
And he talked about 2 instances in particular where he said that Sean Combs broke into his house, and he told the jury about his suspicions that later Sean Combs arranged the firebombing of his car.
Cudi said that in December of 2011, Cassie called him and sounded scared because Diddy had found out about their relationship. Then Cudi got a phone call from Diddy's assistant who said Diddy was in his house. Cudi called him and Diddy said he just wanted to talk. But when Cudi got home, no one was there. However, some things were out of order, like his dog being locked in the bathroom. or gifts that he had opened up. Because of this, Cudi called Diddy and said he wanted to talk, but he changed his mind and called the police instead. He also said that Cassie had told
Yeah,
him
fuck
about being
that.
abused by Diddy. Fast forward a month later, and Cudi got a phone call that his car was on fire. Someone had cut a hole in the top of his car and dropped a Molotov cocktail on the inside. He had theorized that it was Diddy who did it based on his previous exchange with him. Cudi had also met up with Cassie and Diddy after his car was firebombed, but Diddy said he had no knowledge of what happened. Cudi also noted that Diddy was standing looking out the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. Apparently, years later, they ran into each other again, and Diddy said he wanted to apologize for everything and that he had found peace with what had happened. Also, another weird thing that happened after Cudi took to the stand was that Young Thug called Cudi a rat, and there were a bunch of people who kind of seemed to agree. And Kanye said a similar thing on Twitter, although that's Kanye, so that's a little different. But regardless, this mindset.
Damn,
is really
wait,
stupid to
what
me
did
because
Kanye
this
say
is
on
an
Twitter? I
really
gotta see
stupid
that.
to me because this
Go
is
back.
stand was that Young Thug called Cudi a rat, and there were a bunch of people who kind of seemed to agree. And Kanye said a similar.
I wish Cudi hadn't testified against Puff. We need to not be locked in white systems. Praying for Puff and his family, praying for Puff Daddy and the family.
Thing on Twitter, although that's Kanye, so that's a little different. But regardless, this mindset is really stupid to me because this is an alleged rapist and assaulter of women, and
Yeah, come on,
you
Kanye.
can't really rat on someone like
Wrong
that.
guy.
Regardless, that was Cudi's testimony. But Cudi and Cassie weren't the only people who gave their side of this story. An LA police officer and fire department arson investigator talked about being called to the scene. The officer said after getting the call and pulling up, he saw a black Escalade that sped off. And after running the plates, he found out that it was registered to one of Diddy's companies. The arson investigator said that neither Cassie or Diddy's assistant would talk to him, and that's probably because his assistant at the time claimed that she was also abused and threatened. Capricorn Clark, who started as a personal assistant but eventually rose to head of marketing for Diddy's fashion company, testified on her time working for him on and off from 2004 to 2018. Apparently, in 2011, during the Kid Cudi incident, Diddy kidnapped his assistant and forced her to go with him to Cudi's house. Apparently, early one morning, Diddy came pounding on her apartment door with a gun and forced her to come with him. This was to go to Cudi's house, where she claimed Diddy was planning on killing him after finding out about the relationship between Cassie and Cudi. Clark was forced to wait in the car while Diddy and one of his security employees went searching for Cudi in his house. Apparently, after a crazy car chase, Diddy threatened to kill Cudi, Clark, and Cassie if she went to the authorities with any of the information about them going to Cudi's house. Later that night, she claimed she also saw Diddy beating Cassie. This all happened weeks before Diddy allegedly blew up Kid Cudi's car. So there were 3 different people corroborating this story on top of the police finding a car registered to Diddy's company, which is absolutely crazy. And on top of all of this stuff, there have also been a variety of other people who have testified against Diddy making similar claims. Diddy's former personal assistant David James testified about his time working for him. James recalled the first time he walked into Bad Boy Entertainment for a job interview. He said that one of Bad Boy's employees pointed to a photo of Diddy and said, "This is Mr. Combs' kingdom. We're all here to serve in it," which is absolutely insane. James also talked about his daily tasks, which included things like stocking hotel rooms, buying drugs, and even allegedly driving for Diddy, who was armed with multiple guns, to confront rival record executive Suge Knight. There's been a huge ongoing beef between Diddy's Bad Boy Records and Suge Knight's Death Row record, with a whole history that I cannot get into right now, but basically they hate each other and have beef for years, so Diddy seemingly wanted to slide on Suge Knight with his assistant in the car. These sort of activities is what led to James quitting his position, and he said, "I was really struck by it. I realized for the first time being Mr. Combs' assistant that my life was in danger." A hotel manager in Beverly Hills,
Chat,
Frederick
this
Zamora,
man
discussed how
FaceTimed
Diddy
me
often stayed at his
to
hotel,
fucking show
bringing
me
a group
Japan,
of
dude.
people
Look at
for the
this shit.
freak-offs. Frederick said that Diddy
You guys
would
see
always
this?
spill candle wax on everything
That's
and use
crazy.
excessive amounts of oil. And he also said that in his notes, he would always have to place rooms as out of order upon Diddy's leaving for a deep cleaning. Joshua Croft, another one of the agents from Homeland Security Investigations, briefly mentioned that they found an account for Frank Black, which is an alias apparently used by Diddy. There wasn't any more info for this specific thing, but I find it really interesting that he had a fake alias. That's pretty suspicious. And Capricorn Clark also had a lot more to say about her time working for Diddy. She said that his abuse began on her first day when he threatened to kill her if she ever had anything further to do with Suge Knight because she used to work with him. She also mentioned that later on in her first year, she was held captive for 5 days in a dilapidated and locked down building in Midtown Manhattan. While there, Diddy's Diddy's associates conducted multiple lie detector tests to inquire about the disappearance of 3 pieces of high-end diamond jewelry that had been loaned to Combs and which Clark had been entrusted to look after. While she was held captive, she was threatened, and they were saying that she would be thrown into the East River if she fails the test. And apparently at the end of each day, one of Diddy's security guys would take her home and search her entire apartment for the jewelry. After all the tests failed, she says that she was fired but eventually rehired because of Diddy's birthday party. Eventually, Clark left after being pushed by Diddy to work for another record group, but then she joined back to Bad Boy Records. Then in 2012, she was fired again after reporting the 2011 kidnapping to Bad Boy Executive. The label claimed she was terminated for improperly taking vacation, and Diddy told her she would never work in the music industry again. She ended up winning a wrongful termination suit for the whole ordeal, but the amount was not revealed. Diddy's defense kept trying to poke holes in her statement, saying like, why would you keep returning to this job if all this terrible stuff was happening? I mean, you got kidnapped twice. And she explained that it was because she was unable to get a job anywhere else in the music industry. While employed by Diddy for the last time as a creative director in 2016, she said that every decision related to Ventura, from her hair and clothing to her schedule, had to be personally approved by Combs. So clearly, with all of these stories that we've seen so far in the trial, there is a huge pattern. Not much else that's noteworthy has really happened. As of now, the trial is about halfway done, assuming it goes according to schedule, and while it isn't looking good for Diddy, I'm not sure they have much else other than what was presented in the indictment and what's been corroborated by the witnesses. It seems like the prosecution has all of their main arguments out of the way, and now they're just lining up a ton of witnesses to help corroborate this story, and they're just stacking up testimonies to solidify what they've already said and accused him of. Also, little editor note, many people are wondering if Diddy will testify in his own defense, and my go-to source for this stuff is Bruce Rivers, the criminal lawyer, who I think broke it down pretty well.
The question of the day: will Sean, the Diddler master, will he testify? I'm gonna give you my prediction. I predict he will testify. And let me tell you why.
All right, sorry about that, chat.
He's got nothing to lose.
I got a buddy in Japan right now.
He's got absolutely
He had to flex
nothing
on me
to
real
lose.
quick.
You know, generally speaking, the rule of thumb is this: you don't want your client to testify if you can avoid it. Why? Because your client's not sophisticated, generally speaking. But the problem with a case like this, where you have, it's not a he said, she said case, really. I mean, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. Because there's so much other things other than Cassie's word that corroborate what she's saying. But if you only hear one side of the story, if you only hear what Cassie is saying, where's the counter-revealing narrative? Where is the person saying, no, this is really what happened? You know, they're going to have to, unless you call in all kinds of witnesses of people that were there and she's, no, I saw her do that. Of course she did.
Also, another editor note, Trump was talking about possibly pardoning Diddy. I hope that doesn't happen, but apparently he'd consider it.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think some people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me.
Anyways, if you guys want to stay in the loop with the news on this and other things in the music industry, make sure to subscribe.
All right, guys, that's gonna be it. That's our catch up on Diddy. So that pretty much pieces everything together of what is going on. But now, let us see what the outcome of his trial was. Let's get a verdict.
Although Drika Duncan is outside the court, she's been following this case for all of those 7 weeks that it's been ongoing. Drika, good to see you. What's the mood? What are you hearing from where you are?
There are people yelling out a potential verdict, the result. We are not going to report that just yet. The last note that I got from Alice Gaynor, who is inside the courtroom, was at 10:15. The judge said, all rise, and that the jury was being let in. Let's talk about the jury there for a moment. 8 men and 4 women, at least 5 people of color. This is a very diverse jury, and they have been listening to testimony for the last 8 weeks, 7 weeks of testimony, and obviously deliberating in this last week here, the 8th week. But they have heard from 34 witnesses, and 2 key witnesses that are part of this indictment, part of the charges, were Jane, a pseudonym that was used for an ex-girlfriend that he dated from 2021 to 2024, and Cassie Ventura, truly the star witness in all of this. She was with Combs for about 11 years. She said that she met him when she was 19 years old, was signed to his record label, but talked to the jurors and gave her testimony about being abused and saying that she did not want to partake in what Combs called freak-offs, where he would watch her have sex with escorts. She was on the stand for 4 days, and Jane was on the stand for 6 days. So the jurors got a lot of information. They saw videos of both women engaged in sex acts that were not available to the public. They saw images of Cassie, her bruised body, emails and text messages that the defense would say tell 2 different stories, and they maintained that there were 2 trials happening. Mark Agnifilo, the lead defense attorney, saying this was a modern-day love story, but the government begging to differ and say this isn't even about a love story. This is about a crime. We're just getting word not guilty on count 1, not guilty on count 2. Is that correct?
Guilty on count 3.
Guilty on count 3. Stay with me, Tony.
Not guilty on count 4.
Not guilty on count 4.
And guilty on count 5.
And guilty on count 5. This is just coming into us right now. Could you repeat that for me, Nia? She's our field producer. You said not guilty on count 1. That is the racketeering conspiracy. The second count,
Not guilty.
Not guilty on count 2. Is that correct? Not guilty.
Alice, guilty on count 3.
Guilty on count 3. That would be the Mann Act transportation of Cassie Ventura. And if you could, looks like I have the note as well, so I'm just going to read it. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy, not guilty. Count 2, not guilty. Count 3, guilty. Count 4, not guilty. Count 5, guilty. So essentially, the jurors found that he was guilty of the Mann Act. That is the transportation to engage in prostitution, but they found him not guilty on sex trafficking, very serious charge there where he could have spent a minimum of 15 years in prison, and not guilty on that racketeering conspiracy, which he could have spent up to life in prison for. So that is the very latest. We're going to get more information as things are coming out in terms of the mood inside that courtroom. What is Sean Combs doing? What is his family doing? What are the jurors doing? How are they reacting? All of that should be coming to us momentarily. But again, if you're just tuning in, Sean Combs not guilty on the most serious of charges, the racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking.
All right, Drika, thank you very much. With us also is criminal defense attorney Caroline Polisi, a CBS News legal contributor. Caroline, this is a mixed result, and we do have a bit of color from the courtroom from our Alice Gaynor. Combs, just before the verdict was read, walked in, said something to his family, and then put his glasses on. If you could, please put yourself in the position of this defense team and Mr. Combs. How would they be feeling here with 2 guilties? And I should mention they carry potential sentences of 0 to 10 years. So he could be facing criminal prison time at this point. Put me into their mindset right now. How are they feeling about this result?
They are high-fiving each other. This is a huge win for the defense. These transportation to engage in prostitution counts, Mann Act counts, don't have a mandatory minimum. Given his prior history, he doesn't have any prior convictions. He could get away with time served, even a couple of years. I mean, this is one of the best possible outcomes that they could have hoped for. You know, the sex trafficking and the RICO conspiracy, that means the jury was was buying what the defense was selling in terms of this overarching theme that this was not coercion for sex, that these two women, Cassie and the woman with the pseudonym Jane, that they entered into these relationships knowingly, that they made a cost-benefit analysis to engage in these acts, and that there really wasn't coercion, whether that was in the form of financial harm. Remember, we heard about him sort of hanging over Jane's head that he paid her rent, or whether that was, I mean, we all saw that 2016 Intercontinental Hotel video of him beating Cassie, apparently in the midst of a freak-off. So even that wasn't enough for the jurors to overcome that hurdle. I think this is a huge deal. The prosecution had been sort of critiqued for maybe overcharging this case. I think it shows that it was. And the fact that they came back quickly after that modified Allen charge that was administered yesterday with that not guilty on the RICO charge shows you how quickly they got there. So huge win for the defense.
Caroline, thank you very much. I want to bring in Jessica Levinson, also a CBS News legal contributor and a Loyola Law School professor. Her work focuses on constitutional law, election law, and the Supreme Court. She's one of our best analysts. Jessica, how are you feeling about this result? We just heard about potential high fives from Caroline's perspective. How would you feel about this result if you were sitting in the Diddy camp right now?
Exactly the same as Caroline would. Excellent analysis.
Yeah, I'll say he beat the worst charges for sure. Which, I mean, thinking about it, like, those are the harder ones to prove anyway. I don't understand enough about the racketeering conspiracy. I don't think I gauged enough from that to really gain traction or thinking on that. Sex trafficking, though, I mean, those are pretty serious charges. I don't know if all the baby oil is enough to prove that. But if you consider this, the transportation to engage in prostitution, if you consider that sex trafficking, wouldn't these two guilties automatically make these two guilty? How did he beat sex trafficking if he already got caught for transportation to engage in prostitution? I mean, sex trafficking is just the unwilling version of that. So pretty much what they're saying is Cassie was, I'm sorry, I might get her name wrong, but she was willing. If she's willing, it's prostitution. If she's not, it's sex trafficking. You'll have to let me know in the comments below.
This is a big win for the defense. It shows that the prosecution was able to get guilty on the most straightforward of the of the counts. But when it comes to those more complicated counts that we've all had the opportunity to talk about now for months, whether or not Sean Combs really had created this criminal enterprise, whether or not the freak-offs cross that line from maybe morally questionable or seriously questionable to illegal, I think that's where things broke down for the prosecution. It shows that these are complicated cases to bring, that not every federal case that's brought is a slam dunk winner. And certainly, I think there will be kind of Monday morning quarterbacking of, should this have been charged differently? I think they presented all the facts they could have, but moving this from there was immoral, unethical behavior to this was a criminal enterprise to the tune of a racketeering charge, that's a really high hill to climb, and we're seeing that this morning.
Jessica, the public is going to be very interested in whether this very famous man goes to prison or not. The two guilty verdicts carry potential punishments of up to 10 years, but as Caroline pointed out, they also have no mandatory minimum. It could be 0 years. Do we have any sense at this early date of where in the range of things he could fall?
So we're going to look, the prosecution and the defense will both submit sentencing memorandum. They will make their argument to the judge. The judge will have discretion to say, I think X is appropriate. I clerked for a federal judge, and he used to tell me, when we went back, he said, it's within my discretion. If I want to give a big bear hug and say, no, go be a good citizen, I can do so. I don't think we're going to see that in this case, but I think some prison time could absolutely be on the table, again, given everything that we've heard in this case.
All right, Jessica, thank you very much. Let's go back to Drika Duncan outside the courthouse. Been following this from the very beginning, and she's with Elaine Quijano, who we're going to talk to in a moment. But, Drika, what are you hearing outside the courthouse? It's been kind of a circus out there. People have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
What's the scene like now?
Right now, people are yelling. There are quite a few Combs supporters that have been outside, a lot of content creators. But I'm hearing from Alice Gaynor inside the courtroom that Combs, quote, pumped his fist at one point and he put his head up to the sky with prayer hands. So that is his reaction moments after hearing that mixed verdict. Also something to note, you know, the Southern District of New York has a, I believe, 99% conviction rate. So for this to happen, a big win really for Combs in terms of the best possible outcome. But now we find out if the federal courts will continue prosecuting him on those charges, those counts that he was found not guilty for. But Elaine Quijano, you were in the overflow room where you can see the reaction from family. I know it was very tense in there. Describe what was going on.
So just to give our viewers a sense, basically where we were was a couple of floors down from the actual courtroom itself, as you know. And what you see there are windows into that courtroom. So you have a camera that is not quite a head-on, but it does give you the perspective of what it looks like from sort of the front of the room.
Right.
So
when
you
I was
could
sitting
see
in the
him.
courtroom, you
Yes.
see the profile and
That's
you're in
right.
the back.
So
but you're
here-
seeing Combs, you're seeing
That's
the
right.
attorneys, you can't see the jurors, of course.
Right.
But you can see the family who are usually in the second
That's right.
row.
That's right. So what we saw, it was interesting. I'll just sort of set the scene. As the jurors were coming in, it was interesting to watch Sean Combs, before the jurors were brought in, was seated at the defense table, as you said, a couple of rows up from where his family was. But he appeared to be looking through a notebook. He had reading glasses on, I noticed, and he was intently staring at either a book or notebook, flipping through it in his lap. Then, when the jurors were brought into the room, he immediately turned, looked at them, and when the verdict came, that very first count of not guilty, he put his hand to his head, his right hand, just like this, and clearly seemed to be relieved. At that point, we also watched as the other counts were read, and at one point we could see him squeezing the hands of his defense attorneys. The defense attorneys had their arms around each other, sort of side-hugging each other, and then we watched as Sean Combs turned towards that row where his family was sitting and did a prayer hand gesture like this and turned back towards the front of the room.
Chat. I mean, what else can we say about that, honestly? That's what they said. It's a big win for him. I mean, Diddy gets out practically scot-free compared to life or more that he could have had. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Let me know. I got a poll going up right now. It looks like we only got one vote in, and currently, yeah, chat thinks 5 years. 5 years would be fine for Trump. I mean, not Trump. What are we talking about? Diddy. Next is probably going to be a little bit of Trump stuff that we're going to catch up on. But, yeah, guys, that was the whole Diddy drama in one little section. That's kind of tough. That's kind of tough. I haven't been keeping up on any of the Diddy stuff, and I mean, racketeering, that's kind of what I want to find out. What is racketeering? Let me look this charge up. Racketeering refers to the act of participating in a legal business scheme, often involving a pattern of criminal activity for financial gain. Oh, so they were trying to just label the freak-offs as racketeering. And he was pretty much like, no, dude, it's just an orgy. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, maybe he should have got hit with racketeering. Who knows? Was he making money off of it? No, he was spending more on the baby oil. Anyways, guys, that's going to end for our Diddy update. If you like the content, thank you for watching, and hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you